Hello everyone, welcome to today's story. After months apart, Alex finally brings Tuna and baby Henry back to the farm. But beneath the calm of this rural life, a storm of old prejudices and whispered rumors still lingers. Why did Tuna leave in the first place? What made her decide to return now? As they work side by side, will the warmth of shared routines be enough to erase the shadows of the past? And when night falls, what drives Alex to finally break his silence and pull out a ring? Will Tuna accept his proposal after all the judgment they've endured? Or will the weight of old wounds hold her back? Stay with me until the very end to uncover the quiet yet life-changing answer. And don't forget to subscribe to help us reach 10,000 followers, so we can bring you even more stories filled with love, choices, and the moments that change everything. The road back to the farm was quiet, except for the soft hum of the engine and the occasional cry of baby Henry in Tuna's arms. The rain from yesterday had left the air fresh, tinged with the earthy scent of wet soil. Alex kept his eyes on the road, but from time to time he glanced at Tuna, still unsure if she truly meant to stay this time. When they arrived, the familiar sight of the weathered wooden gate swung open. Alex stepped out first, reaching for the bags before Tuna could. "Let me hold them," he said, his tone gentle but firm. Inside, the old pathways were damp, puddles reflecting the pale morning sky. They entered the house where the air was cooler. Alex set Henry's things down carefully, then pointed to a spot near the window. "Here, it's cooler for him to rest." Tuna nodded, lowering the baby onto a mat, her movements instinctive and tender. Alex fetched a mosquito net, draping it with care, as though guarding something more fragile than just a child's sleep. For a moment, neither spoke. Outside, the farm stretched in quiet resilience. The vegetable patch overgrown from neglect, the chicken coop in need of repair. Tuna's eyes followed the view, and a faint sigh escaped her lips. "Things have changed," she murmured. Alex only replied, "Because you weren't here." It wasn't accusation, more like a truth that had been waiting in the air, unsaid. The silence between them was not heavy, but it carried a history of absence, misunderstandings, and words left unspoken. And yet, beneath it all, there was something else. An unbroken thread that had brought them both back to this place. Morning light spilled across the yard, catching on the sheen of rainwater still clinging to the leaves. Alex handed Tuna a broom, the kind gesture wordless yet full of intent. She took it without hesitation. Side by side, they began sweeping the courtyard, the rhythmic scrape of straw bristles marking an unspoken accord. From the corner of her eye, Tuna saw Alex walk toward the chicken coop, scattering feed with practiced ease. The hens clucked in response, the sound filling the air with a kind of homely music. She found herself smiling faintly. This was the rhythm she had once known, the one she had left behind. When Alex called her over to the fish pond, she followed, brushing loose strands of hair from her face. The pond's surface rippled as Bran hit the water, the fish darting upward in quick flashes of silver. "They've grown," Alex said quietly, "faster than I expected." Tuna crouched beside him, the breeze lifting the hem of her sleeve. "Maybe they were waiting for you to come back," she replied, her voice almost lost to the wind. They worked without hurry, each task folding into the next. Sweeping, feeding, checking the vegetable patch. Alex paused once, leaning on the broom handle, watching Tuna carry a basket toward the shed. "From now on," she said, meeting his gaze for a fleeting second, "I won't make you worry like before." Something softened in his expression. He didn't answer right away, just let his eyes linger, as if memorizing the way the sunlight caught her profile. The farm felt different now, not because of the work they had done, but because of the quiet steps they were taking together. By late afternoon, the farm smelled faintly of damp earth and fresh feed. Alex returned from the small market with a basket in one hand. Fresh fish, a bundle of greens, and a handful of eggs carefully wrapped. Tuna was already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, rinsing vegetables under a thin stream of water. He set the basket down on the counter. "For dinner," he said simply. She glanced at the fish, then back at him. "You didn't have to." But Alex only shrugged. "It's been a long time since we've eaten together here." The kitchen was filled with the sizzle of oil, the rhythmic chop of a knife, and the quiet shuffle of footsteps. Occasionally, their eyes met in brief, unguarded moments, neither too long nor too fleeting. Outside, dusk began to fold over the fields, the windows catching its fading gold. When they sat down, the table was modest: steamed vegetables, fried eggs, and the fish Alex had brought. He watched as Tuna took her first bite. "Good?" She nodded, chewing slowly. "Good." Halfway through the meal, Alex's voice broke the quiet. "If you stay, don't leave again." It wasn't a demand, more like a wish that had grown too heavy to keep inside. Tuna placed her chopsticks down, the steam from the rice rising between them. She met his gaze, a small but certain smile curving her lips. "I won't." In that moment, the farm outside seemed to settle into stillness, as if it too was listening. Between the clinking of bowls and the soft hum of the evening, a promise, fragile yet steadfast, took root. Night settled gently over the farm, the air cooling as the last traces of sunlight slipped beyond the hills. Inside, the kitchen still held the faint warmth of the meal they had shared. Henry slept soundly in the next room, his quiet breathing a steady rhythm in the hush. Alex stood by the wooden counter, his hands resting on its edge. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then, as if drawing from somewhere deep, he began. "You know, people talked. They had their opinions. About you, about us." His voice was calm, but each word carried the weight of years. Tuna didn't move, her back straight, her eyes on the flicker of the oil lamp. She knew the truth in his words, the whispers, the sideways glances, the questions left hanging in the air. "I've carried those voices with me," Alex continued, "but none of them mattered as much as the thought of you here with me." He turned, closing the space between them. His hand reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, worn velvet box. The room seemed to grow quieter. "I don't want you to just stay for a season, or until things feel easy again," he said. "I want you and Henry here for the rest of our lives." He opened the box. The silver band inside caught the lamplight, a simple circle without ornament, pure, unpretentious. Tuna's eyes glistened, the unspoken answer trembling there. She didn't speak, but her hand moved slowly toward his. It was not the end of their struggles, but in that stillness after so many storms, the first light of something unbreakable began to shine. Morning brought with it the soft murmur of voices in another house. Alex's sisters sitting with their mother over tea. Sunlight streamed through the open doorway, catching on the steam that curled from their cups. "I'll be going home with my husband and the children soon," his sister said, fingers tracing the rim of her cup. Their mother nodded slowly, her thoughts lingering elsewhere. "I just wish Alex would settle down," she murmured. "Then I could leave here for a while without worrying." There was affection in her tone, but also a quiet urgency. The years had made her wary of leaving her son alone, both in the house and in life. She spoke of her last trip to the countryside, of cooking for Alex, of the unspoken hope that someone else might one day take over that role. When Alex returned, the screen door creaked open. "You're back late," his sister teased, though her eyes were curious. He smiled faintly, setting down his bag. "I took Tuna and Henry back to the farm," he said. "We had dinner there." Their mother's gaze softened, though she asked no more. Perhaps she sensed the shift in him, a steadiness she hadn't seen before. Alex excused himself, saying he had work to finish upstairs. As he climbed the steps, the voices below faded into a low hum. They were voices of family, of expectation, of bonds that pulled in different directions. Yet, for the first time in a long while, Alex felt those ties might not be chains, but roots, deep enough to hold, even if the wind rose again. The next morning, Alex's sister stood by the doorway, already dressed to leave. "Before I go," she said, "I want to see Tuna and the baby." Her voice carried both warmth and a trace of something else, perhaps unfinished business. Alex glanced at his watch, then nodded. "I'll take you." The drive to the farm was quiet, the road lined with fields still damp from last week's rains. When they arrived, Tuna was sitting on the porch, Henry cradled against her shoulder. She rose quickly, greeting them with tea and a shy smile. Inside, the air was cool, carrying the faint scent of fresh-cut grass. They spoke of simple things at first, the weather, the fish pond, the grapefruit trees. But soon, Alex's sister's gaze grew steady. "About what happened before," she began, her voice careful. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak so harshly." Tuna lowered her eyes, the steam from her teacup curling upward between them. "It's in the past," she said softly. The words felt like the closing of a door, one that had been left ajar for too long. Henry stirred in her arms and Alex stepped forward, holding the baby with surprising ease. His sister reached out to touch the child's cheek, a smile breaking across her face. "He's a good baby," she said. "If you ever need anything at all, tell us." For a while, they sat in quiet contentment. No speeches, no grand gestures, just the slow, deliberate weaving back of trust, thread by thread, in the morning light. When it was time to leave, Alex carried his sister's bag to the car. The gravel crunched under their steps, the sound fading as they neared the gate. Tuna stood by the porch with Henry, the baby's tiny hand curled around the edge of her shirt. "Take care of yourself," Alex's sister said, her eyes lingering on Tuna a moment longer than necessary. "And take care of him," she added, nodding toward Henry. Tuna smiled faintly, her reply quiet but steady. "I will." The car's engine started, its low hum cutting into the stillness. Alex looked back once before getting in. The glance was brief, but it held the weight of last night's promise, one neither of them had spoken of since. When the dust from the road finally settled, silence wrapped around the farm again. Tuna walked back inside, laying Henry down where the afternoon light pooled across the floor. She sat beside him, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the curve of his cheek. The memory of Alex's words from the night before returned, clear and unshaken. "I want you and Henry here, for the rest of our lives." She closed her eyes, not to escape the thought, but to hold it closer. Outside, the field swayed gently in the wind, as if the farm itself was breathing with her. Somewhere between the quiet of the room and the soft rustle of leaves, she felt it, that fragile, persistent pull toward staying. It wasn't yet an answer, but it was the beginning of one. She stayed there for a long time, listening to the wind outside and Henry's steady breathing. Alex's words echoed in her mind, each one sinking deeper than the last. Somewhere between the silence and the rustle of leaves, she realized her heart had already moved closer to his than she dared to admit. But will she take that final step? Will she place her trust in him after everything they've endured? Thank you for watching until the end. If you felt the pull of this story, make sure to subscribe and help us reach 10,000 followers, so we can share more moments of love, choice, and the quiet turns that change lives forever.